Hello and welcome back to another live session here from Graph UK HQ. And once again, we've got David in the hot seat. How are you doing, David?
Good, thank you today.
Not seen you for a couple of weeks. We had Stormwater,
Yeah.
but we're now back with Rainwater. How are you?
You've had double Stormwater, haven't you? We had Stormwater last week released, and you had CPD.
I did. I had a Stormwater CPD with Mark yesterday, and
So,
Stormwater Live released last week. I'm all Stormwatered out.
Yeah, you're back to Rainwater today. So.
I am back to your second favourite subject. The first being wastewater, which you say every week.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, we have to go for the pain of talk about Rainwater today.
Yeah. How's your weekend been?
Oh, brilliant, thank you. Got to see the family, played some golf out on the frosty golf course.
Nice.
Which is very good. Played quite well, so yeah, pleased.
Back into the swing of things with golf, then, are you?
Very much so, yeah.
That was great fun, wasn't it?
It was terrible, yeah.
Shut up. But anyway, enough chit chat. We'll get into the crux of what we'll be talking about in today's Rainwater research session, and that is a question that we come across online that I thought would be worth answering. But someone asked, and I thought would be the good main topic: what is the purpose of rainwater harvesting?
Okay, I think we can then kind of delve into this question quite deeply. But you need to think about it, I think, in two different approaches. The first one I would think about is, of course, on a global scale. What rainwater harvesting means globally is far different to what we may consider here in the UK. Globally, of course, where there isn't really access to mains water, rainwater is potentially the only access to water for certain individuals. So for them, it's their life source, it's their most precious commodity that they can get hold of. Bring it back to us here more locally, we're very fortunate to have access to clean, fresh drinking water on the tap via mains water. And yeah, the need for rainwater is not quite so much because we are so lucky to have that. But we are, of course, coming into a period of time where urban developments and the industry of construction is growing so fast that all of the old systems that we have in place are coming very stretched in terms of the demand and how much we're utilizing them. And we need to try and find other sources of water to help substitute from the excessive mains water that we use in our everyday lives for whatever it may be, for the different appliances, toilets, showers, you name it. We are very greedy, and it's kind of scary to think that if you were to like take a step back and go on a bit more of a adventurous holiday, like you go camping for a couple of weeks, or you go out, go touring across Europe, and you don't have like access to a tap or a shower where you can just flip a valve and hey presto, you've got water. It kind of puts everything back into perspective. When you get home, you think, oh my goodness, just having that accessibility is, I'm very fortunate to have that. But yeah, with the ever-growing population, certainly here in the UK, we've got a big growth in terms of cities, and of course we've got lots of people coming into the country to take the opportunity of living in a very free environment that we have in the UK, for free in terms of lifestyle. So yeah, the demand on rainwater is could be really looked at in terms of helping substitute towards the mains water appliances that we use it for. So as we've discussed on this channel multiple times before, rainwater can be used to really substitute quite a lot of our mains water consumption. And really, rainwater harvesting in terms of a purpose is try and really support where mains water is not requirements, use rainwater instead. So whether this be for irrigating your lawn or using it back to flush toilets, using it in your washing machine to clean your clothes, there are quite a few applications in terms of just standard rainwater we can use it for. And of course, you can treat rainwater locally on site to make it a better quality, so then you can use it for other applications as well. So rainwater is really probably the future, unless we can get mains water more readily available to our homes to be used.
Because you briefly touched on that, and if you kind of look at it at a broader scale, I think it's a crazy stat, like 500 million people currently in the world don't have access to fresh, clean drinking water each and every day. And it's an ever increasing number, and obviously because it's out there in the developed world, or sorry, less developed world, we don't think about it as much, and because it's not impacting us directly, it's one of those things where I just turn my tap off, got water. So I don't think about my water usage, consumption, how much I'm potentially wasting. But the more that comes to the UK and potential droughts that we saw last summer and we'll see again this summer, it puts into perspective how much of a finite resource it actually is.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I don't really want to touch on old news because we'll have in the news section later. But it wasn't too long ago when we had all those terrible earthquakes in Turkey,
Yeah.
and of course you hear about it on the news like 2 weeks, where you hear about all these reported deaths, and they haven't got access to electricity, clean water in this case, and there's just something silly here in the UK, whereas the next big thing that happens, and then it's just completely forgotten about. Those people are still there, still don't have access to their water. They are the nearest serious need of like aid and support, and I think the attention is kind of very much away from it. But as is with, of course, with rainwater, it being a precious commodity, could they potentially look at innovation and introducing it? So in these cities where, when they redevelop, we've got this technology available to us now, really something should be put into place to help support an ever-growing population. But anyway, bring it back to generally the purpose of rainwater harvesting. As you say, Callum, globally, it's so much more precious than it is more locally. But locally, we are getting more and more stretched in terms of how much more mains water we're using. So supplementing where we can, the use of rainwater instead of mains is really a good direction to take.
Yeah, and we see it quite a lot, especially in the Thames Valley catchment, because we get the TV adverts for Thames Water. I've mentioned this previously. But the stats they throw up in terms of water wasted because of the pipe work is, I think it's like 1 billion litres of water a day or more is lost because of pipe work in the UK. And that is mains water. That's not even rainwater. It's not grey water. It's not like sewage. That is actual clean drinking water that we want to use for our consumption. And if we can substitute that, especially on domestic scale, for up to 50%, that's a huge saving.
Yeah.
And if you look at it even bigger on a commercial scale, where more water is probably being used, where you can substitute up to 80, 90%, that's even huge. That's an even bigger saving. That would reduce the amount of demand for mains water.
Yeah, it's the advantages of rainwater harvesting. They're like 5, 6 really big standout ones. You've touched on one there in terms of just really reducing mains water consumption. But as we said before, like the impact in terms of carbon footprints to manufacture rainwater, manufacture rainwater, to manufacture mains water and then transport it to our everyday homes through these pipelines where it's being potentially lost. You've got, of course, the associated costs with the homeowners paying for that, for that mains water, which with rainwater harvesting, we can substitute that down. And then you've got, of course, the advantages of rainwater harvesting supporting with droughts and flooding. So we've got more of a balanced ecosystem to help protect the environment. And then there's the added benefit of rainwater having like all the nitrogen and stuff in it drawn out of the sky. So it's much better for plants and all that sort of thing as well. So rainwater is so amazing in terms of the potential it can give us, and we should really try and use it better where we can.
And you touched on it a bit there with water companies. Like, a lot of people don't realize how much energy goes in for the actual, like you say, manufacturing of mains water. I think when we last looked at 5% of all the UK's energy is used by water companies to treat mains water.
Yeah.
Which is a vast amount of energy to be used.
Yeah, and in terms of the carbon footprint, if you think about that, it's not, when we glossed over it, said the manufacturing, of course, to make that water drinkable, we are using electricity, and to generate electricity, we are currently using fossil fuels.
Yeah.
So that is huge carbon footprint, and of course, the government's doing great things in terms of trying to use more energy beneficial things like solar and hydroelectric and all that sort of stuff to try and substitute where instead of using fuels, we're using more clean types of energy source. But that is ways off in the future. Like they got this great plan for 2030 where we're going to be pretty much all using electric vehicles. But in terms of the infrastructure to try and get that laid out, there is a huge amount of the background that people generally will not be thinking about. So where we can try and do the best we can in terms of rainwater and pull it more locally instead of having to pull off the mains, this additional 5%. Everyone can help out just a little bit, and in terms of everyone doing a little bit, in terms of the grand scheme of things, it's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it there briefly about the government and their goals for 2030. That is a long stretch, it is, and they're using the, and we'll just say they've got this in their kind of, oh, look what we're doing, but then they're producing a mass amount of concrete in order to build HS2. That's digging up lots of land, kicking up a load of carbon, kicking up a load of concrete to fit in. But that's another subject.
Yeah, and I actually watched a television program briefly at the weekend, which was to do with wastewater. And you mentioned Thames, and I don't really like naming water companies. They do fantastic things, but the amount of things that go on that they have to do because there's just so much capacity that the old systems just can't look after it is absolutely insane and detrimental to the environment. So what people can do locally in terms of rainwater harvesting, wastewater treatment, it can make a huge difference in terms of the global impact and protecting the environment.
Perfect. I think we've gone in quite a bit of detail, but hopefully that answers the purpose of rainwater harvesting and why we think people should incorporate it and why there should be support in order to as well. Because not only does it have such a has a positive impact to the people themselves, but has such a powerful impact on the environment going forward.
Yeah.
Perfect. So that was the main topic for today's rainwater research session. And now we're getting into my favorite section. It is in the news. So we've got a couple of news stories. The first being the data center being used to heat a swimming pool. This is a new technology, and I come across it yesterday, and it was in the news, I think, last night as well. So it was a little data center generated by, it says there, washing machine sized data center, and the heat given off was captured by oil that they surround the data center in to capture the heat, and then they use that to heat the swimming pool, which obviously helps to reduce the amount of energy that it's using at the moment. And I think from this technology, they're actually looking to use this sort of system in homes in order to heat them, which I think is a really good idea. And I wonder whether it's a very similar sort of system to what Germany use in their manufacturing plant.
It's quite possible. It's something you did touch on basically back in school when you talk about chemistry. We talk about the general chemical structure in terms of the transfer and creating of molecules and heating. Generally, heat is always generally seen as a waste byproduct.
Yeah.
So the way that we can potentially pipe that heat back through to applications such as this is a huge energy saving in terms of, particularly for this swimming pool, it's probably costing them hundreds of £1,000s a year to heat this swimming pool. And then, it actually says there, rise by, for us to try and recycle and it's kind of the concept of rainwater harvesting, just reusing something that is readily available to us, just piping it back through, being more aware of how much waste products and making that waste products work for us can have significant savings financially.
Yeah, and I think, like I mentioned, this sort of system will be looked at into ways they could actually reheat homes. Because there's another story, I think it was in New Scientist website, I think that's what it's called. And they were looking at this case in particular and thinking, how can we use that for homes? Like having these little data centers in order to heat homes, which I think is such an amazing idea. And like I said, that leisure center, its energy costs are going to increase by up to 6 figures, which is a detrimental cost to them. In order to have this kind of installed is quite something.
And yeah, of course, they have an upfront cost to install this type of system. But if they're saying it's going to rise by £100,000 a year, I can't imagine it's going to cost them that much to get the equipment installed in the first place. So the payback and return in terms of the long run is very significant for them.
Yeah. But I wonder, like I mentioned before, whether this is the sort of system that Germany use. Because if you don't know, our manufacturing plants in Germany, the heat given off by the manufacturing machines, the heat is then captured and put back into the offices in order to basically keep them warm during the winter. So I wonder whether it's a very similar type of system.
Yeah, the technology might be slightly different, but the concept is very much the same.
But yeah. Cool. So that was more of an upbeat news.
Yeah, why don't you?
I should have thought about the order of these stories, because I'm going to bring it straight back down. So the next news story is about the river levels of the UK and how they're at record lows and how they're forecasted to be
Lower still.
getting lower, yes, because May is turning out to be quite dry. I mean, nice warm weather for us, but it means that after a very low dry winter, it means that, we are looking at UK river levels being at the low, and not only rivers, but also reservoirs, as we mentioned before, about the importance and purpose of rainwater harvesting. These reservoirs supply the drinking water and the water we used around the UK. So once investigation was done, they've actually found out that the river levels in the UK are currently at their lowest. They've been for a while, and they might continue to lower with the dry May that's coming in. And I think we mentioned in a couple of sessions ago that the summer we're expected to have yet another drought this summer. So looks like we're going to be lean, mean summer. Yeah, not much to say about it, I guess.
Yeah, I'm just it's a scary notion to think that we had. Well, it's difficult to think back. You've obviously clearly said in this channel before you're very much in favour of having moderation, having a few days of sunshine, then some rain to keep things all nice and friendly, but balanced. But yeah, to have another potentially long dry spell in the summer where we are going to be depleting reservoirs again, which again we still know in the south west of the UK we still got some areas that still classed as in droughts, but the reservoirs haven't.
Says there
East Anglia and Devon,
Cornwall, and the answer is silly. Because in fact, East Anglia, this is a big problem at the moment for them. I've read another news story about farmers. They were looking at rainwater harvesting in order for their purposes, because in some parts of East Anglia they've had less rain than Greece last year, and that's how dry it's been out there. And like I mentioned before, Devon and Cornwall, we've said already, and I think it's on our website, about how they're still in drought status and they still have hosepipe bans. And that was brought in last July. So it shows how low the actual river levels and reservoir levels are at the moment. And it's something that gets swept under the carpet and not really spoken about.
Yeah.
I cut you off.
No, I was going to say, you're right though. I think come the summer, May, even as early as May, we'll be maybe getting glorious sunshine, blue skies in the sky again. But that's all well and good for us until we start having these droughts where we don't actually have access to mains, or we might get some sort of restriction in terms of how much mains water we are consume each day. So again, looking at rainwater harvesting as an avenue to supplement some of the mains water demand is huge.
So a bit of a.
That's right. It's good to give these give the viewers an outset of they're now thinking, yes, great, we're going to have a really hot summer look forward to. But just word of caution that be careful with how you use your water.
Yes, because like I said, I think it was in our last rainwater session, moderation is what we need with the weather. Yes, it's nice to have the sunny weather. We do need our rainfall. I am happy with 3 days of sun and then 1 or 2 days of rain.
I think that's a good life motto for you, Cam. Just everything in moderation.
Very true. Everything in moderation. Funny fact, I was speaking to my grandparents about moderation last night because it was something on the news. We were watching TV and it was all about nutrition, diets. And I read something online. This guy in his 40s, a billionaire, he spent a lot of his time figuring out the best diet for a person. Like, he's done all these studies, he's tried different things. He basically reversed his aging process by like 5 years. But he, like, for breakfast he eats like a massive bowl of fruit, and then lunch and dinner is very much just these massive salads. And he has he's 40 years old but now has the body age of a 20-year-old. And I kind of thought to myself, what is the point?
Right.
Because when you get to 90, is 5 years difference really going to do anything for you? And yet you spend all your life eating fruit and salads, not even fish and chips.
Well, I'm a great advocate for actually enjoying food. So you're talking to the wrong person here.
Right. Okay.
I very much think that food is one of the great pleasures of life, And again, being in the UK, we have access to so much different different types of cuisine in terms of Chinese, Indian, Italian, whatever it may be. We've also got more traditional things like cottage pie and fish and chips, as you say, in terms of it's not really the staple UK pub dinners.
Yeah, British food.
But of course, I do think again, moderation actually starting the day with a decent breakfast is probably one of my my favourite things. But yeah, again, I'm not just going to have salad for lunch. I will probably start with a salad and then have something like meat, rice, or risotto or pasta alongside it or something.
But like this is like he's eating fruit salad all day, every day. Like imagine next week he gets hit by a bus and he's on his deathbed. Last thoughts. Oh, I wish I had a Chinese last week instead of that poxy salad. Like, can you imagine how boring it would be? It's like, I know I'm very strict in the week, and then I allow myself to make sure I have like one decent meal where I just go outside of the moderation.
Yeah, you go and enjoy
which
it,
is the
100%.
Chinese fish and chips, roast dinner.
Mm-hmm.
I could go on and on.
Yeah,
burger and chips, not like salads and fruit.
That's right. You eat 5 fruit and veg every day, but outside of that, go mad.
Yeah, it's basically he's reversed his aging process through moderation, and I'm just there like, what is the point? I bet he's really fun at a dinner party. He's like one of those guys.
Probably is. He's probably talking about his nutritional diet that he's been working on for the last few years. And then
I talk about, I had a cracking fish and chips last week. I'd ruin the conversation. But anyway, that's it for today's In the News section. We diverted a bit towards the end, but valuable lesson. Don't spend your life eating fruit and salads because you're boring. Moderation is the key. But anyway, now is time to answer all the questions that have come in during today's session. I think we've had a few that have come in prior that I'll read to David. So first question that came in is, can you drink boiled rainwater?
Right, okay. Boiling rainwater, water in general, is going to remove some pathogens from the water, potentially a majority of them. But that is all it's going to do. There are other things in rainwater in particular that boiling water will not remove. Some things are quite scary, like pesticides, so little bugs. So if you were to have a rainwater collection tank and you feed this water into your property, there may be a chance for little bugs to get it within that water. And of course, putting that into a kettle, that's not going to make them disappear. And of course, there's also mineral content and other potential living things within that water. And of course, again, boiling a kettle, we're not removing those particular compounds, elements from the water. So they're always going to be retained within the water. And of course, they're going to be consumed by you. And those could be quite harmful to you. So general advice on this would probably be no. It will have a beneficial effect, but it's not going to save you entirely. To really get water to a drinking water standard, certainly rainwater, it needs to be filtered and purified properly, which of course is quite a technical process, and you have to have quite substantial equipment to do it. So boiling water alone is not adequate.
Perfect. That answers that one. Then kind of similar on the lines of it is, how long is rainwater good for?
Whoa, okay. So rainwater generally, of course, falls from the sky, and we are looking to collect it into a storage container. Again, kind of touching on what you just said there, it kind of depends on the type of storage device that you have. It could be an above ground tank. Above ground tanks, although some tanks may be like UV stable, we're still very subjected to temperature fluctuations and potentially those little pesticides getting into the water, in which case that water is going to become contaminated quite quickly. So you're kind of looking at potentially 1 to 2 weeks to try and really recycle that water. I think the important thing to remember here is that whenever we talk about fitting a rainwater harvesting tank, we generally size that tank. And the idea with the sizing it in terms of the yield and demand is that we rotate that water in that container to try and keep it as clean as possible. So looking at above ground tanks, yeah, you probably want to cycle that quite quickly to avoid those contaminants coming into it. With underground tanks, we've got a much more controlled environments. We haven't got the UV and the temperature fluctuations to that water because we haven't got direct sunlight hitting that tank, so we can store that water for longer. But yeah, when we're talking about sizing an underground rainwater harvesting tank, you really need to consider what are you going to be using that rainwater for. If you're just going to be using it for garden irrigation, of course, you can potentially oversize your tank quite significantly because we're not using that water for anything which is going to be harmful to us. If you're going to be using it for other applications, then you need to potentially really consider start treating that water to remove those contaminants so it always gets the best water through into the property. One of the final notes, I suppose, with any rainwater collection device, you'll generally filter the water into the tank, so you are getting rid of most of the impurities and stuff. So that always is something to consideration in terms of discoloring the water. So that is just, yeah, something to consider. We have got a little bit of a filtration up front, but taking into consideration what we're going to be using the rainwater for will really dictate how long you want to store that water for.
Perfect. That answers that one. And then I guess on nearly similar lines, next question was, can discoloration of water occur in a rainwater harvesting tank?
Discoloration is to do with the introduction of impurities into the tank. So with the collection of rainwater off a roof, or potentially if you're collecting rainwater off a surface like a patio or pavement, you are channeling that water down into the collection device. Now, depending on how clean that surface is, you're introducing impurities. It could just be dirt and grit. It could be oil if it's coming off a car park. With the introduction of these impurities, you are going to discolor the water in the tank. The tank itself, the water that's in there, should remain clean if the catchment area is clean. So it's only by introduction of the catchment area that water will become discolored in the tank.
Perfect. That answers that one. Very brief answers. You didn't elaborate. You've been practicing at home.
Maybe.
I knew it.
It's nice when you get questions which you've kind of answered like 20 times before to customers directly on the phone. So
well, now you can actually just send them this clip so you don't have to answer them on the phone.
Maybe. No, well, if once you post them on live online, Callum, I can
hopefully they stop coming in.
Then I can edit those out instead of having to type them up. But
exactly. Actually, we can do that for you. I could show you how. But anyway, I think that is it. I think that's all the questions that have come in. I can't see anything else that's come in during today's session. And I'm waiting for a thumbs up from the nerds in the studio.
There's a few of them there today. It's good to have some support in the background.
Well, usually they're out here all
heckling,
staring at us. Yeah, heckling. You don't know what you're doing. But anyway, thank you, David, for your time today.
Thanks,
I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next week for your favourite session, Wastewater Wisdom.
Nice.
But with a spin.
With a spin.
With a spin. So next week on Wednesday, the 22nd of March, is World Water Day. And we're doing a World Water Day takeover of our live session.
Okay.
So don't worry, I'll give you enough time to prep. But we'll be talking all about the importance of water and the importance of World Water Day and making people aware of it.
Very good.
So yeah, join us for that.
Look forward to that.
You'll be in the hot seat. Like, your seat will never be hotter as I've never been before. It's going to be a good one. I'm very excited for this. But anyway, I hope you're looking forward to that, and I hope you guys are as well. But anyway, thank you, David, for your time today.
Pleasure.
And thank you always to you guys for taking time out of the day to come watch us. Make sure you're back next week for a World Water Day special where we talk about all things water, why it's important, and what the importance of World Water Day too. So yeah, have a great rest of your week. Hope you enjoyed Cheltenham and hopefully making some winnings. I'll be betting Friday. But anyway, have a great rest of your week. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you on the next one.